Well, good morning and welcome to Monday. How's everybody doing today? Thank you for joining me on the Daily Dose for this Monday, June 15th, as we are finishing up 3 months of being online with you. And our church is getting ready to come back to on campus worship. And of course, with that, there are a mixture of feelings and thoughts about that. I don't think it matters exactly what day we start. Some will think it's too early, some will think it's too late, and others are thinking it's just right. And trying to find that delicate balance can certainly be a challenge. And so we have been very thankful for your prayers and watching with us as we are preparing to come back. There's an old saying about the elephant in the room, and the context of that idea is that imagine that you are in a room or a gathering of people in which with you is also an elephant, and nobody seems to want to address the elephant in the room. And what that really means is that we're just all ignoring the fact that there's an elephant. We all know there's an elephant. We all can see there's an elephant in the room, but none of us want to acknowledge that there is an elephant in the room. And so that concept, that visual, has been taken over into ideas of conversations, issues that need to be addressed. And so often there are elephants in the rooms that we don't want to address or we fail to address. And I think that as we as followers of Christ are coming to this point, 3 months into COVID issues, 4 months, however long you want to count it, there's a couple of things that I think we need to address. And I think there's some things that we need to understand on this side of it. And it has to do with who we are going to be now that we've been through this pandemic. First of all, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I'm tired of hearing people talk about the new normal, but the reality is this is going to be different. Life now is different than it was when the year started. And as badly as we would all like to just skip over it and go to the next year, or can I have a mulligan and can I have a do-over on this year? We don't get that opportunity. We simply have what is in front of us. We simply have to deal with what we have at the moment. And I think that there's some things that we need to discuss. And I think there's some things that we have to be aware of coming into this situation. And before I get to 5 things that I want you to be aware of, before that, we need to realize that, in my estimation, there is no day that we're going to get to that we are without issue. And I think we need to understand that. We would all love to say, okay, well, this is the day that COVID-19 ended. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to deal with it. I think we're going to have to deal with it. I think in the same way that coming out of 9/11, going to the airport and traveling was never the same again. I think now we are facing an issue where life is just not going to be the same. Now, we can isolate ourselves and we can complain and we can gripe and we can moan and groan and we can point fingers at whatever, or we can simply embrace this is the new reality in which we have to live. How can I glorify God in it? And I think that is actually the more joyful way to look at things. Okay, I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to, with social distancing, who even heard of that before March 1 of this year? None of us had heard of that, but I think it's something we're going to continue to hear about for a long time. And I think that we have to be ready to understand that life as we know it, even if our state is opening, it's coming with its own issues, as you have different hot spots that are reviving themselves. I read in the news over the weekend that Beijing is now back on lockdown because they've seen some uptick in things. Okay, this is life. This is life as we know it. And Mike, you're exactly right. We're seeking God for the decisions when we are supposed to do things, and He is giving us the answers. And there's just a lot of factors involved in all of those kinds of decisions. But I think that we need to realize that social distancing moving forward may not change for a while. Wearing masks in public may not change for a while. Being able to, I mean, when we come back to church, we're not going to take the offering up like we have always done it. And we as Baptists have a hard time with change sometimes. We deal with difficulty handling change, but we're going to have to realize that we cannot simply be without logic. We can't be without proper thinking. We have to incorporate that into the faith structure that we have and realize that some things just have to adjust, but it's okay. It's going to be okay. And we're going to make it through that. So, I don't know. We have to look at some different things, and we have to look at a different way of doing things. And in looking at some of that and preparing for, the reopening process, it kind of got me thinking about what have we learned through this time? What should we have learned? What have we awakened ourselves to that we need to understand? I don't think the way that we go about church is going to be the same now as it used to be. I think we have been awakened to a new reality and realize that things are different. And as much as I would like, in some ways, in my own spirit, as much as I would like to say, let's just go back to this, pick a time. I'd like to go back to this time. Things were easier in this time frame. Things were simpler. Reaching people was different. Helping people. And you could even say, we could just go back to January and we could say, hey, man, I wish we could just go back to January. The unfortunate reality of life is we don't ever get to go back. It's in the movies. It's in the made-up fantasy world that we can time change and we can go back in time. We don't get that luxury to time travel. We simply have to live for Jesus in the time we have. And we need to glorify Him in the moment that we have now with an eye toward tomorrow. Certainly, we can draw from our history, we can draw from our experiences and say, based upon these things, I want to now reach today's moment. And then we need to be saying, as I reach today's moment, as I live for Jesus in today's moment, how can that propel into tomorrow's moment? But yesterday, I can't ever get back. Yesterday, I can't go back to, even if I wanted to. So we have to deal with today. I titled the podcast today, Meeting the Elephant in the Room. Because coming through COVID, we have realized a few things. We've realized that we can get online. We've realized we can do more online. We have realized that we can touch people's lives and hearts in different ways. We've realized that personal Bible study and devotion is of greater value than maybe we once thought. When we have been moved into isolation, we realized, hey, I need to do something here. And that is beautiful. It's wonderful that we have moved into that position, but we cannot stop that. Just because we maybe in our church, we get to come back to worship, just because we can come back to what we think is a sense of normal again. The normal what you thought of as normal in January is not normal in June. And frankly, I don't think it's going to be normal in July or August or September or next January. What we as followers of Christ have to do is take the unchanging message of the gospel and apply it to an ever-changing world in which we live. And that is so difficult sometimes, because I think it's our human nature that we want to go back to simple, or we want to go back to a time when we thought it was simple. I think it's interesting. I could want to go back to a certain time period. And if I went back to that time period, you know what I'd hear my parents say? I wish we could go back to this particular time period. And if we went back there, you know what I'd hear my grandparents say? Wow, if we could just go back to this time period. We're always wanting to go back. And the reality is we need to be moving forward and managing that, leveraging the truth of the gospel in today's moment is the job of all of us as followers of Christ. So when we talk about some of these things, we need to realize that it's really easy to complain, and it's really easy to point fingers and blame. But the reality is that's not helpful. What we need to be doing is simply expressing the love and mind and heart of God to a world around us today in a way that they can understand and receive that message and be able to make decisions on that message. Well, I said earlier that there's 5 things that we must deal with, and I've talked about a couple of these in other podcasts. The first one is that we need to be able to understand the culture in which we live. Now, that's a tough one because many people don't like the culture that we live in. But the reality simply is this: this is the time that we get. This is the moment that we have. For whatever reason, God, in his infinite wisdom, placed all of us right now in June 2020. And right now, it's as if he's handed us 5 talents or 3 talents or 1 talent and said, I'm going to be gone for a while. Take care of this. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with this June 2020? What am I going to do in July 2020? How do I know when the master's coming back and wants to have an account of what we're doing and what's happening and what did I do with what I had been given? And if we simply bury our talent and pine away for a time when it used to be easier, then when the master comes back, he's going to take away our talent and give it to one who has been faithful to invest and to grow and to develop and to utilize what they had at the time to grow the talent that had been given to them. And I think in the same way, we have to do the same thing. So we have to understand the culture we live in. And it doesn't do anybody any good to simply complain about the culture in which we live. This is the time that we're in. This is the time we have. And God is asking us, what are you doing with this particular time? How are you handling this particular moment? So we need to understand that this is the time in which we live, and we have to learn to accept that this is the time in which we live. And I don't have to accept everything that's going on as right in my culture. There's a difference. But I do have to understand this is where I am. What good can I do? What good can I bring to this cultural moment? How can I bring God into this moment? How can I bring the love of God into this moment? How can I bring the heart of God into this moment? How can I love God and love people in this moment? So that's the first thing that we've got to do. We have to accept. And I think that for many of us, we haven't arrived at that moment yet. We haven't yet arrived. And the reason I say that is because I see a whole lot of y'all's social media posts, and you're cranky and you're mad, and I get it. I may not like everything that's going on either, but it's not helping to continue to produce negativity. I'm not saying to be Pollyanna. I'm not saying that oh, everything is great and wonderful, but we can't say the sky is falling at every moment either. We've got to find this balance of learning to live in the moment we have, and the second thing we have to do is not only live in the moment we have, but we have to love in the moment we have. And the church has been known for being countercultural. And man, we love going to the verses that talk about how the church is different and Christians are different. And you're exactly correct. We are supposed to be different. And we won't be liked and we won't be favored all the time. But if the only thing that we're known for is that we whine about what we don't get, then that's not helpful in this particular moment. I do think we should stand up for our rights. I do think that we should stand up for Christian values and Christian rights. And at the same time, understand that not everybody's going to agree with that. And that's their right to not agree with that. And we need to be offering an option to our culture. And so when I say we should be countercultural, that doesn't mean to be negative. What it means is let's provide a positive option for those who are seeking in their life. There are people all over our neighborhoods seeking something more fulfilling, seeking satisfaction and not finding it, seeking an identity and a purpose beyond I get up, I go to work, I come home. I get up, I go to work, I come home. They want more. All of us want more than that. And we need to be providing that option, which leads to the third thing that we're going to have to do. And that is we have to present a faithful presence at work. Now, work for some of you may be school. Work for many of us is going to work. From some that are retired, God has another work for you to do. The question is, am I being faithful in that vocation? Just because we're retired doesn't mean that I am without things to do. I hear people tell me all the time, I'm busier now than I ever was. I'm busier in retirement than I was when I went to work every day. So that's your new vocation. Retirement is your new vocation. Are we having a faithful presence in that vocation? And I don't know that we as the church have provided well enough equipping and enabling you to go and do that. And that's one of the things that I really want to do post-COVID is to be that equipper and enabler to help you know how to be a faithful presence where you are. And we must view that and look at that and deal with that in a real way. A fourth thing that we're going to have to do is we need to have the term is an evangelistic stance and approach. But the theological term is missiology. We need to be viewing our local community, wherever it is you live, as a mission field. And I think one of the things that we have done over the years as Baptists, we're very well known for missions over there. We're very good at having missions someplace else. We're very good at providing money for somebody else to be on mission wherever it is that God has called them. But God has called you to this moment. God's called you to that house. He's placed you in your neighborhood. He's placed you at your job site. He's placed you in this moment in time. Am I being a faithful witness? Am I being a faithful presence? Am I learning to understand the culture that I live in so that I can reach them in a way that is unique? I listen to some podcasts as well, and I was listening to an interview with a well-known pastor and writer and speaker, and it was interesting because he brought up some very interesting points that the different generations have needed different things when it comes to life and God and church. And we all need Jesus. That's true. But we all are seeking different things. And as I began to do some research on my own, it began to align with what he was saying, that there's a generation that is very duty bound and guilt ridden, and that as preachers for many years we just dealt with people's guilt. You're not perfect, you're not righteous, you're not holy, and so let Jesus handle the guilt that you have. But there arose a generation in our country that guilt was not necessarily a factor that they ever dealt with. They would give guilt to their kids, but they wouldn't necessarily deal with guilt on their own. They were seeking happiness. They were seeking an emotional situation. They didn't want a doctor or a dictator to fix their problems. They wanted somebody to lead them to a better space, but to lead them in a way that they can discover it on their own and to be able to own it in their own way. My generation came up, and we were all about coming together as a team and wanting to dialogue and explore and be a part of shaping the process. That we recognize people have more value than that people have value more than potential just to serve me. But there's two other generations that are alive and well in our communities and in our neighborhoods right now that are seeking identity. And when we all try to come together and do this thing called church, if we don't understand the differences that we find amongst us, I mean, we recognize the differences. We just look around and we recognize the differences. But the way that we interact with one another, we must understand them. You say, what does it have to do with evangelism? If I don't take the time to understand you, then I can't love you. And if I'm not loving you, then how am I honestly sharing the gospel with you? What I'm ending up doing is just trying to fix you. And that makes a person feel like they're just a project, just a notch on your evangelistic belt. But Jesus taught us that we love them. We need to love them. Look at how many times Jesus, it was said of Jesus that he looked out and had compassion upon the people. With passion, he saw them and he loved them and he knew the needs that they had and came to them in a way that met the needs they had. When we move into these directions, we understand that this is how we work and live and share the gospel in our culture and time today. We can't reach this moment in the same way that other moments may have been reached because it's a different time and it's a different place. And we have different circumstances that have shaped all of our lives. And we need to realize and accept that and then move forward in that. Well, finally, we need to recognize, and this is probably the most controversial one of the five, and that we need to recognize Christian development in a digital age. We have to, if churches are going to thrive moving out of this current crisis, if churches are going to thrive coming out of this moment as everything reopens and we live life in this way, we're going to have to realize we're going to have to accept and purpose ourselves around the digital. And we're going to all have to accept that getting online is okay. I heard somebody talk, I heard a conversation the other day that was interesting, expressing to an individual that, we just need to get online. And they're like, wait a minute, I don't get online. I don't deal with online. I don't get online. I don't want to be online. And the question was asked, do you have email? Well, yeah, I have email. Well, you're online. If you have email, you're online. And so we need to educate ourselves in some of these things. And we need to understand that the world today is in the digital moment, and it's a struggle. I'm not native to that. I mean, I still get frustrated with my phone, and I hand it off to my child and say, fix it. I don't know what to do with this. I need you to fix it. But I want to know, and I want to learn, but I'm still behind because I'm just not native to it. And we understand that we're not all native to this, and some of us don't want to deal in the digital, but this is how we're going to have to reach our world today. And this is how we move forward today. And the elephant in the room, if it's not accepting the time that we're in, or loving the people that we have, or being faithful in our presence, or learning how to share the gospel in today's world, we also have to understand that we're going to be digital. And July is going to be different than March was, and August is different than May. And we're going to have to realize we must be willing to continue to take an unchanging gospel, but present it to an ever-changing world. And that means we take the core understanding of the gospel and we continue to repackage it in a way that helps them understand that and receive that and deal with that. So these are just some things that are on my mind on a Monday as we move toward reopening. And in all of that, there are things that we're going to have to work through and work on. And we're going to have to come together in order to accomplish those tasks. Thank you for joining with me and just listening this morning. These are things to think about. We all need to spend time before the Lord with each of these areas and have Him shape our heart and our mind, and to prepare us to continue to move forward, to reach the community that we have, because that's what we have. And the community that we have is different than it may have ever been before. And it's our job in this time to reach the community that we have. So let us be aware of the elephant, understand it's there. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and let's take some time and have a conversation with that elephant. Okay? You guys have a great Monday. We'll see you back tomorrow.